I used to believe that once I hit 80, things would finally settle down. That life would grow simpler, softer, that after decades of work and worry and trying to do right by everyone, I'd get to coast a little. I thought the hard parts would be behind me, the proving, the striving, the pressure. I pictured quiet mornings, slow walks, a few laughs with the grandkids, and long afternoons with nothing left to chase. It sounded nice, and in some ways, that part came true. But what I didn't expect, what no one really tells you, is that aging doesn't always make things easier. Sometimes it reveals how fragile we really are, how much more there is to feel, how much we still carry. I don't mean this as a complaint. I've lived a good life. But in the quiet of my days now, I've realized there were at least 10 things I thought would get easier after 80, and I was wrong about every single one of them. Some of them surprised me. Some of them humbled me. All of them taught me something I wasn't ready to learn until life slowed down enough to whisper it in my ear. So, if you're still thinking the hard parts end at a certain age, or if you're walking this same path beside me, maybe what I'm about to share will sound familiar, or maybe it'll prepare you for the road ahead. 1. Sleep gets weirder, not better. I always thought that with age would come rest. Deep, uninterrupted sleep earned from a life well lived. I figured the stress of my working years was the culprit behind all those nights staring at the ceiling. So once I retired, I thought, this is it. Finally, I'll sleep like a log. But 80 rolled around and sleep changed. It's not that I don't sleep. I just don't sleep like I used to. I fall asleep early, sometimes in the chair, still holding the remote. But then I wake at 2 a.m. or 3:30, wide-eyed, as if I've just finished a cup of coffee. No dreams. No alarm. Just awake. I lie there trying not to check the clock. I listen to the house breathing. I count heartbeats. I try prayer, stretching, deep breathing. Sometimes it works. Often it doesn't. And the dreams. When they come, they're strange. Old memories stirred together like soup. My childhood home, a job I left 30 years ago, my wife's laugh echoing in places we never visited. One night, I dreamed I was back in my high school cafeteria in Topeka, Kansas, holding a tray with no food, surrounded by people who didn't recognize me. I woke up feeling like I had been somewhere I no longer belonged. I talked to my doctor in Brattleboro about it. He smiled and said, "Your brain's doing its own nightly housekeeping. It just works a little differently now." I've stopped fighting it. When I wake, I make tea. I read a few pages of a familiar book. Sometimes I write down whatever I remember from the dream. Sometimes I just sit. There's a strange kind of peace in being awake when the rest of the world is sleeping. But I'd be lying if I said it's easy. Sleep didn't get easier after 80. It got stranger. But I'm learning to stop expecting rest to look the way it used to. Now it comes in smaller pieces. A nap on the porch, 10 minutes of quiet before dinner, a moment of stillness while the kettle whistles. And maybe that's enough. 2. Your world shrinks faster than you think. I used to be everywhere. Every Saturday morning, I'd drive across town to the hardware store. Tuesdays were for coffee at the diner. Sundays, we'd take long drives. No destination, just the road. Now, I can go days without leaving a 2-block radius. It didn't happen all at once. It started when I stopped driving at night. Then I stopped driving in rain. Then I stopped driving altogether. At first, I told myself I was simplifying. But then I noticed my world had started to shrink. The pharmacy, the grocery store, the mailbox, and the bench by the community garden. That's my current orbit. I remember when my daughter visited last fall. She said, "Dad, want to go into town? Just for a change of scenery?" I wanted to say yes, But the thought of unfamiliar sidewalks, parking lots, and noise made me hesitate. I shook my head and said, "Maybe next time." She didn't push, but I saw the flicker in her eyes, the recognition that my world was getting smaller. It's not that I don't want to explore. It's just that the logistics now come with weight. What used to be easy now feels like a climb. But here's the strange part. In shrinking, my world has grown deeper. I know the way the light falls across the living room at exactly 3:45. I've memorized the rhythm of my neighbor's footsteps as she walks her dog each evening. The barista at the corner shop in Lexington knows my name and my order. I don't go far, but I've become more present in the places I do go. Still, I'd be lying if I said it was easy. There are days I miss the freedom, the spontaneity of a road trip, the feeling of walking into a new place and figuring it out. But for now, I'm learning to let intimacy replace novelty, and to accept that just because a world is smaller doesn't mean it's empty. 3. Long-term friendships get complicated. I used to think that the friends I had in my 50s and 60s would be with me until the end. We had history, camping trips, holidays, poker nights, arguments over things that mattered and things that didn't. I thought friendship would get easier with time, less effort, more comfort. But I was wrong. Some of them passed. That part I expected, even if it hurt. But what I didn't expect were the ones who drifted, the ones who moved across the country and slowly stopped calling, the ones who got quiet after their spouse died, the ones who began every sentence with, "Remember when," and then never asked what I was going through now. Friendship after 80, I've learned, takes just as much courage as it did at 20. Maybe more. I had a friend named Walt. We met in Milwaukee in our 30s. Spoke weekly for years. He was the kind of man who made you feel like everything was going to be okay. Then his wife died and something in him closed. I called, left messages. No response. A year later, I got a card. Short, awkward, but honest. "I don't know how to be around people right now." I understood. And yet, it still hurt. Friendships aren't static. They change, even when we don't want them to. Some deepen, others fade. I've made new friends since turning 80. At the library, the walking group, the community garden. But it's not the same. There's history to build, trust to earn. Still, I show up. I say yes when someone asks if I want to join for tea. I write letters even when no one replies. Because staying open, that's the hard part now. Not just for others, but for me. 4. Making new friends feels like dating again. I always assumed that making friends would get easier with age. After all, we're grown-ups. We know who we are, what we value. No games, no drama, just simple connection. But here's what they don't tell you. After 80, making a new friend can feel like dating all over again. Awkward, uncertain, full of quiet vulnerability. There's a community walking group that meets twice a week near the Riverwalk in Spokane, Washington. I joined a few months ago, not because I needed the exercise, but because I needed to hear someone else's voice besides my own. There was a man named Carl, widower, wore the same blue jacket every Tuesday. We started walking side by side, quietly at first. Then, little by little, we swapped stories, kids, careers, regrets. I told him about Mary. He told me about losing his brother in the war. It was easy. But then I missed a week. My knee was acting up. When I came back, he wasn't there. I waited. Another week passed. I asked around. No one knew much. Just, maybe he wasn't feeling well. I never saw him again. And that's the part I didn't expect. How fragile new friendships feel at this age. You can share something meaningful in such a short time, but it hangs by a thread. Will they come back next week? Did I say too much? Am I trying too hard? It's a strange thing, to long for connection and yet feel unsure about how to ask for it. Still, I keep showing up, because the loneliness doesn't go away on its own. And maybe, just maybe, the next person who walks beside me will stay a little longer. 5. Errands become emotional. Running to the pharmacy used to be a task I could knock out in 15 minutes. Pick up the prescription, grab some toothpaste, maybe a candy bar if I was feeling rebellious. Now, it takes me 40 minutes just to get out the door. But what's stranger is how the errand itself feels different. Last week, I went to a little corner drugstore in Athens, Georgia, the kind where the pharmacist still knows your name. I don't go often, but when I do, it's a big outing. I put on a clean shirt, comb my hair, make sure my socks match. Why? I don't know. Maybe because I know someone there will say, "Good morning, Mr. Reeves." And that small kindness sticks with me longer than it probably should. It's not just a trip for pills. It's a reminder that I still exist in the world, that someone sees me, that I'm not just an old man drifting through rooms and days in radio silence. I lingered by the greeting cards longer than I needed to, bought a crossword puzzle book even though I had one at home, walked slowly to the car just to stretch the moment out. Errands used to be chores. Now they're touchstones. Opportunities to hear my name, to be asked how I'm feeling, to nod at another elder in the waiting area who understands, even if we never speak. I never expected a pharmacy visit to make me feel alive, but that's what surprised me most. 6. The mirror tells a story you didn't approve. I always knew I was getting older. The creaking joints, the slower mornings, the pill organizer on the counter. I accepted it mostly, but no one told me how strange it would feel to meet yourself in the mirror and not recognize the face looking back. It happened on a Wednesday morning. I just splashed cold water on my face in the little bathroom of my cottage near Boise, Idaho. I leaned in to shave, as I've done for decades, and there it was, a man I hadn't quite noticed before. His cheeks had sunken a bit. The skin under his eyes was softer, thinner. His hands, reflected in the glass, were speckled and knotted. Strong once, now more careful. I stared for a long time, not out of vanity, out of wonder. Who is this man? He looked tired but kind, weathered, but still here. It wasn't sadness that came over me, and it wasn't fear. It was surprise at how fast time can catch you, and how quietly. For years I thought I'd age gracefully. I imagined silver hair and linen shirts, warm smiles and quiet pride. But the truth is messier. Some days, the mirror is a reminder of how far I've come. Other days, it's a shock, a face I haven't quite caught up with inside. And yet, over time, I've made peace with him. He's not the man I used to be, but he remembers. He remembers the way Mary used to smooth his collar before church. He remembers carrying sleepy children to bed. He remembers every long walk home. So now I look in the mirror, not to check for flaws or to wish something back, but to greet someone I've grown into. He's older, softer, a little slower, but he's still me, and every day I nod to him. As if to say, I see you, and you're doing just fine. 7. Losing your role in the family hits you quietly. I used to be the center of the room. When the kids were young, they'd run to me with questions, problems, scraped knees. I was the ride, the wallet, the fixer of jammed doors and jammed emotions. At holidays, I carved the turkey, said the prayer, gave the toast. They looked to me for guidance, and I gave it, sometimes well, sometimes fumbling, but always with the weight of knowing my place. And then, slowly, the weight shifted. I didn't notice it at first, It wasn't like they stopped loving me. They still called, still visited, still hugged me tight at the door. But something changed. At a family gathering last spring in Cincinnati, a birthday party for my youngest granddaughter, I found myself sitting quietly in the corner of the living room. The food was on the table. The kids were playing. My daughter was hosting, beautifully. Conversations floated around me, and I watched, not as a participant, but as a bystander. No one meant to leave me out. They were just busy. I used to be the one people came to for permission. Now they come to me for politeness. "Dad, are you okay over there?" I smile. I nod. I say, "I'm good." And I am, mostly. But there's an ache that comes with watching your role dissolve. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. You become the one who's taken care of, the one who gets updated after decisions have been made, the one who's asked, "Want us to fix you a plate?" instead of, "What should we make this year?" It's humbling. And I'll admit, it stung more than I expected. I thought stepping back would feel like rest. Instead, it felt like fading. But with time, I've come to understand something gentler. I haven't been forgotten. I'm still loved. I'm just no longer the engine. I'm the foundation. I'm the quiet presence in the corner, the steady rhythm, the one who doesn't speak often. But when I do, everyone still listens. Not out of obligation, but out of respect. My role didn't disappear. It changed. And the hardest part was letting go of what I used to be, so I could recognize what I still am. Now, when I'm asked to sit and rest, I do it without protest, because I know my family isn't leaving me behind. They're just learning to carry things on their own, and maybe that, in itself, means I did something right. 8. You start apologizing for being alive. No one tells you that aging can come with a strange kind of shame. Not loud, not public, just a quiet feeling that you're somehow in the way. I noticed it for the first time during a drive with my son a few years ago. We were on our way to a follow-up appointment at the VA clinic in San Antonio. I had forgotten my insurance card and had to ask him to turn around. He smiled, gently, kindly, and said, "No problem, Dad." But something in me winced. I mumbled, "Sorry." And he said, "There's nothing to apologize for." But I still felt it, like I had interrupted his day, like I had made things harder than they needed to be. And once that feeling took root, it started showing up everywhere. When I ask the waitress to repeat herself, when I call my daughter for help with the printer, again, when I need someone to open a jar, tie a bag, read the fine print. Each time, the same instinct. Sorry. Sometimes I say it out loud. Sometimes I just feel it behind my ribs. And I know, no one in my family wants me to feel that way. They love me. They say it often. They're patient, generous. But still, I find myself shrinking sometimes, trying not to ask, trying not to be too much, trying not to take up space. It's strange, isn't it? You spend your life building things, raising people, being strong. And then one day, you're the one being lifted into the car. And even when no one says a word, you begin to apologize, not just for the moment, but for still being here. But lately, I've been trying to unlearn that, because I've realized something simple and important. I am not a burden. I'm a person, an older one, a slower one, but still me, still curious, still full of stories, still capable of laughter, of listening, of love, and being alive in all its messiness, its asking, its humanness, is not something to say sorry for. It's something to say thank you for. So now when I need help, I try to ask without guilt. When I forget something, I laugh instead of apologizing. And when I feel that old voice creeping in, the one that says, "You're taking up too much," I answer back, maybe I am, and maybe that's okay. Because existing fully and gently is not a thing to shrink from. It's something to stand inside of. And I'm still learning how to do that, but I'm learning. 9. People talk around you, not to you. I was sitting in the common room of a small nursing home just outside Sacramento, waiting for my monthly checkup. Nothing serious, just routine. My daughter had come along to keep me company. I appreciated that. A young nurse walked in, clipboard in hand, and smiled, but not at me. She looked at my daughter and asked, "Has he been sleeping okay?" My daughter hesitated. Then she turned to me. I answered, "Yes, just fine." The nurse nodded, still looking at my daughter, and scribbled something down. That moment stuck with me. Not because anyone was cruel, not because I felt invisible, but because it reminded me of something I hadn't quite been able to name. People were starting to talk around me, not to me. It happened subtly, at the doctor's office, at the bank, at family dinners. Does he want water? Did he eat today? Do you think he understood? I'm still in the room, still listening, still capable of speech. But more and more, I've become the subject of the conversation, not a participant. And it's not just professionals. Sometimes it's family too. They mean well. They're trying to be helpful. But there's something about being spoken about, instead of spoken with, that creates a small ache. Like you've stepped out of your own life and become someone else's responsibility report. It doesn't happen all the time. There are still people who meet my eyes, who ask me the question, even if I take a little longer to answer. And those moments feel like air. They remind me I'm still here, that I'm not just aging, I'm living. So I've started gently pushing back, nothing dramatic. If someone asks my daughter how I'm feeling, I'll say, "You can ask me. I'm happy to tell you." If someone assumes I don't understand, I smile and reply clearly, even if it takes an extra breath, because I believe in the dignity of eye contact, of asking, not assuming, of treating age not as silence, but as a different kind of presence. And maybe, if enough of us remind the world softly, firmly, patiently, it will remember that we don't disappear just because we slow down. We're still here, still aware, still worth speaking to and listening to. 10. You realize you're not the main character anymore, and that hurts. There was a time when everything in my life spun around me, not out of ego, just out of necessity. I was the one making decisions, setting the schedule, signing the permission slips, paying the bills, planning the vacations. People looked to me for guidance, for answers, for direction. And then, gradually, they didn't. I didn't notice it until my granddaughter's high school play in Wichita last fall. I sat 3 rows from the back, wearing a blazer that didn't quite fit like it used to, holding a program with her name in bold. Everyone was buzzing around, parents with phones out, kids in costume, teachers organizing. I smiled, nodded, stayed out of the way. No one asked my opinion. No one needed my help. And for the first time in a long while, I realized I was no longer the main character. I was a quiet presence in the background, a proud grandfather, but not essential to the story unfolding that night. That moment sat with me, because even though I've always known life moves on, it's different to feel the shift in your bones, to watch the people you love write new chapters that you're not part of, to realize that sometimes they forget to tell you what's happening, not because they don't care, but because they're simply busy living. And you're watching. And yes, you're proud. And yes, you're happy they're thriving. But you also miss being needed. You miss being central. It doesn't mean you're bitter, just human. I've come to accept this quieter role, not as punishment, but as passage. I'm not the lead anymore, but I'm still in the story. And every now and then, someone turns back, reaches for my hand and says, "I'm so glad you're here." And in those moments, I remember, even side characters can carry meaning. Even background roles can hold the soul of the scene. So, no, I'm not the center anymore, but I'm still part of the circle. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. When I was younger, I thought getting older would bring simplicity, that life would smooth out, that the rough edges would soften, and that wisdom would arrive like a warm coat, comforting, reliable, always there when you needed it. But now, standing on the far side of 80, I know better. Some things do get easier, yes, but not everything. There are aches I didn't expect, absences I didn't prepare for, emotions I thought would fade, but instead deepened, and truths I didn't see coming until they sat with me, quiet and undeniable. These 10 things I've shared, they're not complaints, they're not regrets. They're just part of the road that no one warned me about. The part where strength takes a different shape, where presence matters more than power, where showing up, even quietly, even slowly, is enough. I don't share these to discourage you. I share them because they're real, and because I've learned that there is great peace in telling the truth, even when it's messy, even when it stings a little. So if you're here, if you're walking this same road or just beginning to, know this: you are not failing because things didn't get easier. You're not broken because you still struggle. You're simply human. And getting older doesn't mean escaping difficulty. It means learning how to sit with it, how to soften into it, how to still find beauty in a world that keeps changing, even as you do. I thought life after 80 would be easier, but what I've found instead is something better. It's deeper, more honest, and still in its own quiet way, full of meaning. And maybe that's what growing old is really about. Not escaping the hard stuff, but learning how to hold it gently and keep walking.